You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Outlouders, you've no doubt heard the news today that former US President Donald Trump has been found guilty of all 34 charges in the hush money trial about his relationship with the porn actress Stormy Daniels. Now, lots of questions. Can he still run for president? Will he go to jail? Can he be president if he's in jail? We will be unpacking all of this on our Monday show, but we are trying to make Fridays news free. We are trying to make the Friday show a little bit of a break from the relentless news cycle. So for now, enjoy our Friday episode.
Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud and to our Friday show where we take a break from the news cycle and breathe out. Are you impressed
I need a
by
deep
my
breath.
mindfulness?
Yes.
Today is Friday the 31st of May and I'm Holly Wainwright. If you missed Monday's ep this week, then you missed us talking about Lizzo being the butt of a South Park joke. What makes you middle class and your creepiest trait according to your star sign?
I'm Leah Freedman, and on Wednesday we talked about the horrors unfolding in Rafah.
And I'm Jessie Stevens, and to listen to both of those episodes, there's a link in our show notes.
But on today's show, guy friends, side friends and friends who take the piss. Also, a devastated daughter's warning, Bridgerton behind the scenes, and Jessie's got a podcast for you. Yes, it's our recommendations. And our best and worst of the week, which include a dirty rat, catcalling and a sick child's very adult requests. But first, Mia Freedman.
In case you missed it, forget face filler and anti-wrinkle injections. The latest plastic surgery to boom are penis fillers. Any questions?
Why not?
Many, I'm sure. An article from The Cut this week, no pun intended, which was obviously about circumcised penis fillers. It was called Inside the Penis Filler Boom, Some Girth Masters Are Made, Not Born.
So, penis filler,
masters.
are
Yeah.
we talking where we're adding to girth? We're not talking about, because I don't know how filler would increase length, but I can see how it might
doesn't.
increase girth.
No, it's width.
All right. So we
It's
want a
filler
fatter
that makes it
penis.
wider. Yes.
Okay.
So
Have you ever looked at a penis and thought, wouldn't mind some extra girth on that?
I can't answer that question.
I can think of one time
Yeah. It's
when
not
I was a lot younger.
unheard of.
I don't think I've ever looked at one close enough to think that it needs some plastic surgery.
how
But
you
I don't know.
feel.
No,
Anyway.
it never occurred me. Like, you do you. It's not the size of the wand, it's the something of the wizard.
No, let's keep going.
Isn't that right? Anyway, the article from The Cut refers to this licensed nurse practitioner who is known online as Injector Chris. And he runs a clinic that has become incredibly busy with a penile girth enhancement procedure, also colloquially known as penis filler. It has now quickly become the bulk, pun intended, of his working life. Injector Chris injects vials first into the sides of the shaft and then
so
more...
is that the mushroomy bit?
No, the sides
No,
is the sides.
the
We're
edges.
getting to the mushroom.
Okay, sorry.
Then more around the glands. That's the mushroomy bit, I think.
Okay.
And then he uses his thumbs to massage out
Oh.
any filler lumps, sculpting through what he calls a hand job. Kidding. Through what he calls transitional zones, like a potter smoothing an edge of clay.
This is hot, isn't it?
He says it goes beyond just filling up a penis. Well, that's a relief. I really do think that there is an artistry to it, to making it look good, aesthetically pleasing, no lumps, smooth, consistent, looks natural, feels natural, all those things. What I do for the face as an artist is really what I'm doing down there as well. And I think it just takes knowing what a nice penis looks like.
I have a question. Does it have to be erect when you're filling it, or does it become erect when you're filling it?
Do you know what? That's very interesting,
Thank
because
you.
that might be, I can only think about when I've had my eyes lasered, which is a little bit different, but you're meant to look at this particular dot
Yeah.
while they laser your eyes, like your eyeball, to correct your vision. And if you look away, then, because that's the laser, right? It burns the wrong part. And all you want to do is look away. And then you think, have I looked away? Should I look back? Should I not move? And then I'm imagining for a guy, maybe he's lying there going, Don't get an erection. Don't get an erection.
And
Don't
now
get an
I
erection.
have one. Do you reckon that this boom is also to do with the rise in like dick pics and videos and all of that? Because
I was going to say pornography, but you're right. It's probably dick pics. It's like, does my dick look wide enough in this pic?
The average person doesn't stare enough to know whether it's beautiful or not.
I agree.
But then pornography as well, I wonder, I think I read with this, like there is a lot of people on OnlyFans who are like, you're just looking at it too much. So of course you're going to want an enhancement.
It's been a while since I've looked at porn, but I don't know if there are a lot of close-ups of dicks in porn.
I imagine there are on OnlyFans.
Men's porn.
I think there are. I think there are.
Apparently, I ordered some penis filler on the internet recently.
Oh.
Yeah, apparently I did. Apparently I ordered some penis filler on the internet recently because I got a phone call, like my phone rang the other day and I answered it, which is weird. Why did I do that? And it was a robocall saying, "We have received your order for penis enhancements."
Oh, it was Injector Chris maybe.
It was Injector Chris.
That sounds like a prank call from
Well,
Leah.
I, being a midlife person, I just hung up and threw my phone across the room and was hiding from it because I was like, it's a scam, it's trying to get me.
You were right.
It's trying to get my money. I think that's a very funny prank
one more
call.
thing to tell you. According to Injector Chris, the average patient requires 7 to 15 syringes for great results. And for 15 injections, it would cost you over $10,000 US. So that's around $20,000 Australian.
All I want to see is a before and after. That's all I want.
I'm sure that is available to you.
I think.
But just do it on someone else's computer.
Yeah.
In our meetings, not that you'd know from the topic we just did, but in our meetings we do a lot of thinking and talking about
what's still listening.
I doubt it. About what to talk to you about every week, right? And we'll often bring things from around the internet. It's a bit like show and tell. Look at this interesting gem I found. And we do a bit of convincing each other. And
Mia brought penis filler.
yeah, of course, surprise. And we were like, oh, let her do it. It's Friday. And this week, we'd all brought a friendship topic.
Just because I don't have a degree, Jessie Stevens. How many more times do you need to rub it in?
You know the other, hey.
I didn't even.
You brought
Funnier than I
bloody
thought.
fecal transplants last week, and mine is in the gutter. Anyway, we all brought something about friends. And so we thought, well, why don't we roll them together and talk about friendship? Because we know that that's something that we all talk about a lot anyway. And I had brought an article that I'd read in The Atlantic called Go Ahead and Make Fun of Your Friends, right? And it's by a writer called Kieran Satir. And they argued in favour of teasing, even verging on cruel banter between friends, and how these days it's the only kind of sort of slightly risque, the kind of jokes you can't make in public, humour that you ever hear is that kind of banter between friends, and they talk about its importance. And it got me thinking, in the tradition of Carrie Bradshaw, exactly. I couldn't help but wonder. Taking the piss has long been the mainstay of traditional male friendships, particularly in Australia, right? If you spend enough time around traditional kind of Aussie blokes, you will wonder if they like each other even at all, even a little bit, because all they do is hang shit, as we say in Australia, on each other.
And there's often one or two in the group that disproportionately are shat on.
Yes, it's
like
true,
there is,
right?
one that you can spot.
It's a bonding thing. And as Kieran Satir argued, he said, banter, teasing, mockery, prankery, taking the piss, leg pulling, joshing, quippery is very bonding, right? And I was thinking, do women bond in cruelty as much as men? Discuss.
That's so interesting because a lot of my friendships have this. When I say friendships, though, maybe I'm talking about family. Like my family relationships are very based on mutual piss taking, and there is something so deeply intimate about it because what you're really saying is I don't love you because I think you're perfect. I don't even love you for all the great things about you. I love you even though you're the shittest. You're disorganized or you did that weird thing that time, or like I see all of your flaws and I love you anyway, and that's what the humor often does. But then I think about it and I'm like, I have a lot of that in my relationship with Luca, with my brothers. I think the three of us have a lot of that.
We do.
But if I go out for a girls' dinner, do we take the piss out of each other?
You pump each other up.
You pump each
That's
other
what
up.
women do.
I do in my group texts.
You give them shit?
Yeah.
Like what?
Like just teasing people.
She hadn't thought this through, had she?
So Mia, you'll send me a video and
Wait,
be like,
maybe everybody does it to me and I got getting confused. To me, it's always been a sign of intimacy.
But that's the important thing, right? So
the way I bond.
People really close to you can do it,
Yeah.
but that's why it's very tricky in friendships. You can't just meet someone and start hanging shit on them. Like, I would immediately be like, what's your problem, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, you're 100% right. No, you can't. Because also you don't know what to tease them about. Like, to me, it's all about in-jokes. Like, you know, what I did before about saying stop bragging about university. Like, that's funny because it's a piss take of you, but it's also a piss take of me. I don't know. There's something
But then
about
if you sort
it that's very bonding. But then when does it just become mean?
yeah. And if you're sitting around a table with a bunch of girlfriends, it's been satirized the way that you pump each other up, like to a ridiculous degree, is you sit there and someone's like, I go to work and don't do anything. And it's like, you need a pay rise. And like everyone just like gets on and they're like, you deserve more. You're too good for your boyfriend. You're like, everyone's kind of cheer girling each other. And I think that that's a result of maybe acknowledging that everyone's self-esteem is in the
just
toilet.
realised it's my close friends. We all take the piss out of ourselves. And that's a different thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because you also can't take the piss out of yourself with people who don't know you because they won't understand.
Yeah, yeah.
So to me, that's the other side of it. It's that I might not take the piss out of you, but I will definitely take the piss out of myself. And you only probably do that also when you feel safe and known by
100%,
someone.
because we have all been, whether it was at school or still as adults, on the receiving end of what people will say is a piss take, but is actually just a diss.
Yeah.
An out diss, right?
Yeah.
So, and then when you look a bit offended or affronted, it's like, what, you can't take a joke? Like, that is a very well-established way of bullying someone, basically. I do take the piss out of my friends to a point, but when I think about it, there's a lot of emotional intelligence about what I will take the piss out of them about and what I will not. And I will not take the piss out of them about anything that I know they're sensitive about.
Yeah.
Like, you can only really take the piss out of people about things that don't matter or that they already have opened the door
themselves
for
have
you.
acknowledged.
Yeah.
So if I've got two mates who are losing their hair and one mate talks about it all the time, I'll have a go at him about it. But the one who doesn't, that would be very uncool for me to suddenly be like, I'm going to start trashing on you because you're losing your hair.
But then sometimes you can just be in a sensitive moment. Like I remember there's something that I always take the piss out of you for, Hole, which is baking your kid a Naplan cake, one of your children.
Yes.
And usually that's the thing that I take the piss out of you on a regular basis. But there was one time when I did and you just were like, snapped at me. You were not having it. And then there was another time when I was away and you guys recorded an episode about me and you took the piss out of me for being too much and like how you needed a break. And it just happened that I was listening to that episode when I was feeling exactly sensitive about that I was too much and that I was just a pain in the ass. And I started crying and then I came back and made you feel really bad about it.
Sometimes it can reveal something to you that you didn't know. Like, one of my friends did this not recently, a while ago, when they made a joke about my parenting that was a real shock to me.
like, that's how people see
And
me.
and it really upset me. And they were joking. And I was like, oh, this is what they say about me when I'm not there. And that's the thing about piss taking, right? Is that if you are in on it, it's okay, but walk that line. And I think the reason why men do it in a different way, and I'm sure that not all men feel good about it, let's be honest, but when you're saying how women bolster each other up all the time because we're probably coming from a lower base of self-regard just because of the universe, whereas men are often coming from a place of like, I'm great, aren't I? And everybody's like pulling them down.
Do you reckon too? Because piss taking is so about context. I remember sitting with a group of friends once and we were giving one of our friends shit in a way that we often have. And someone who was not part of the friend group called it out and was very offended on behalf of this person and accused us of being discriminatory against this person. And that person had to say, oh, there's actually a really long joke about why that's okay. But that's sort of the internet. And when you think about how a lot of our friendships are formed or a lot of our friendships are kept up, because so much of it is texting, which is a very different form of communication and shit giving, I feel like the piss taking, we've had to take the edge off a bit. because piss taking has to be done in person often, and it has to be done with the right people.
There also has to be a perceived equality and power balance, or you have to be taking the piss up, not down. So I remember when Claire came on the podcast, well, you wouldn't because you were on mat leave, we got a lot of feedback from Outlouders. Why is Mia being so horrible to Claire? And it's like Claire, I've known Claire as long as I know you. Admittedly, she didn't live in my house for 6 months during lockdown and didn't marry my son. But she and I take the piss out of each other all the time, and I really love that about our relationship. But when she was on the show, Outlouders didn't like it. I could tell she also couldn't push back on me as hard as she normally would.
There was a different dynamic.
The dynamic was different, and people really picked that up and they didn't like it. And that's a weird thing, like at work. I see everybody as just my equal, but I know I am the big boss and I've got to be careful taking the piss out of someone.
Yeah, if you hang shit on someone whose first date is and you're like, nice shoes, it's like, well, I have a bullying complaint.
Yeah, it's like the people who know me understand that that's the biggest compliment, and I never would unless I thought you were great.
Yeah.
But they don't know that.
Yeah.
And the people listening don't know that.
I came across an article this week in The Cut, and it was called Where Have All My Guy Friends Gone?, which is kind of related to what you were just talking about, Holly. And the author Sarah Wheeler writes about rewatching My Best Friend's Wedding and how she'd actually misremembered the plot. She said, it's not a movie about a woman who is in love with her best friend. It's a movie about a woman who knows that once her best friend is married, their friendship will never be the same. And the idea, of course, is that straight men and straight women can't be friends because there'll always be the threat of sexual attraction, which isn't in line with my own experience or most people's. And this writer, Sarah Wheeler, spoke to a bunch of people about why their opposite sex friendships had faded. So some women said that they actually found the men's female partners tended to be more interesting. So they ended up bonding more with the female partners. Let's say they had a male friend and then they went and got married and they were like, oh, I get a lot more out of her than I do out of you. And others said it was understood that while you could keep your former friends who were men prior to the wedding, you're not allowed to make new ones.
So the old ones get grandfathered in.
Yep.
But you can't commence new. That's so
because it can feel threatening.
Do you know it's funny you say that? This is a tangent, but I was listening to a Glennon Doyle's podcast and she and her wife Abby were talking about jealousy. And they were saying that it can be quite complicated to navigate in same-sex relationships because if someone makes a new friend, they could also potentially be a romantic partner. So it can become,
it's not
quite
as clearly delineated. What is and isn't a
like I go on dates with girls all the time as friends, like friend dates. But if I was doing that with, I've just made this new guy friend, I'm going out to dinner. I do have one guy friend that I go out to dinner with all the time, but he's gay. Although he wasn't gay when we started being friends.
He just spent enough time with you.
I think I realised when I read this that I'm a very basic bitch because I have followed the pattern definitely. I used to have loads of guy friends when I was young. Loads. Some of my best friends were guys. Nearly all those relationships have faded.
Why? Well, you moved.
But no. These are Australian friends. I mean, and English friends. Friends shift when life stages anyway, right? They move away. People couple up. People have babies. You don't have as much in common anymore, whatever. But there is a particular, and it's a shame, like dynamic, because you know how you just said that sometimes if your best guy friend gets married, then you have to work out what your relationship is with their wife, partner, or even if they're not married, but whatever. Either you become friends with her too, and then you're kind of couple friends, or you might not want to be besties with her, but somehow it's like, there was a quote in here that was like, somehow I get lumped with my best friend's wife just because we're the same gender, but actually I want to catch up with my friend. And I have one of my guy friends that I do still see all the time. Now I only ever see him with his wife, which is fine because I like her, but that wasn't our dynamic. Our dynamic was it was the two of us. It makes me sad actually because I used to really love having lots of guy friends. But when I think about it, and I'm friends with some of my friends' husbands, but we're not the kind of friends where I'd like call them up for a chat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is sad. Like I have followed a boring heterosexual maturity path of
Jessie,
that dropping
you've got
off.
more guy friends than anyone I know.
My two best friends are both men, and I have worked really hard at keeping those. But interestingly,
why weren't they your bridesmaids then?
Well, because I had
she
Claire,
had
my
a
sister, and then I had Andy, who is also my best friend. But one was the MC.
You gave them jobs.
They were very involved.
You made one take some photos.
I did, exactly right. But I wonder if particular life stages are more gendered than others.
I think that's true.
So when I was in my 20s, these two guys, like I spent all my uni years working.
Was there never any, like, did you sleep with either of them?
No, I didn't. No.
Was there ever any?
No.
'Cause, I mean, you're all attractive people.
No, we just really, really get along. And maybe it's because I've got brothers and that's just like, I really love I think that different people bring out different things in you. So having mates that are talking about different things or having different life experiences, I just like that.
I always find there's a window in which that's either going to happen and it is or it isn't. And if you get past that, then you're done. You know what I mean? So like when I think about because same as you, my 20s and early 30s, I had lots of guy friends and some of them there might be a weird period in our relationship where maybe, is that going to happen? Isn't that going to happen? And as long as it doesn't happen, you finally get past it and you're friends. You know what I mean? But
then something happens, and I have noticed this in the last year, where pregnancy, having a baby, having the newborn is the most gendered. I have never felt more of a solidarity with other women, and I have never needed other women more.
But also, to be honest, you get pushed into that.
Yeah, you do.
Whether you want to or not. It's
yeah.
like all of a sudden, it's like, here you are, mums and bubs, here you are, like hanging out with your, like you kind of get shoved into it as much as you choose.
Has that put a bit of distance between you and your guy friends?
I mean, I feel like I've got a distance between me and all my friends because I just don't have the same amount of time that I used to. I think it's difficult when you're in the stage where you've got a baby and you can't communicate. I feel this about all my friends who had babies before me and I just didn't fucking get it. I didn't get what time was. I didn't understand where your energy is and how it's just baby and work. And so I think that that's difficult on all of them. But I love, like I will call them once a week or whatever and just have really, really long phone calls where I just feel like we talk maybe about different stuff than I talk to my girlfriends about.
Brent has lots of female friends. He always has.
So does Jason.
Yeah.
I think having brothers, having an older brother really broke my radar for male friends because he was 7 years older than me and I liked nothing more than hanging out with him and his mates. And he had a really tight group of friends and I adored them all. And of course I went from being, a little kid to being a young woman, but I was always completely off limits to them because I was 7 years younger and also his sister. And so I grew up believing that all guys just wanted to be my friend.
Yeah.
And so I would always get really confused. I would be very naive that guys just only wanted to be my friend. And I'm like, oh, no, he just wants to be a friend. And I would get in these situations where I also wanted to be their friend, but then they thought that we were on the way down a different road. And then it would be like, oh, no. And then, when you're quite young and you're like, oh, if someone likes me, I better like them back because I sort of didn't realize that I had agency. It was like, oh, okay, I better be with them if they want to be with me. But I read another story, a Substack newsletter written by Kate Lindsay, and she explained the concept of a side friend. And I guess if to use a pop culture example, it would be Gretchen Wieners from Mean Girls. And Kate Lindsay writes, when you feel like a side friend, you feel like an afterthought. You can tell you're not someone's first choice for the brunch invite or movie ticket. You're always the one texting first. Plans just seem to happen to the other people in the friend group while you're constantly trying to make sure they remember to include you. But a side friend shouldn't be an inevitable part of every friendship circle. You don't have to accept it. If you feel like a side friend, it means your friends are treating you poorly. Jessie, have you ever been a side friend?
I think I have. And nothing has made me happier than leaving those friendships behind, literally just pulling the pin. So I think probably after school when you've got that awkward transition, it can really hurt your self-esteem. And I reckon that if you're in a position where you feel like the side friend, then I would – what's the thing you always say about freeing your future? You need to free your future.
Yeah, you need to free your future.
Pull the pin on that.
That's me as euphemism for dump their ass.
Yes. And I reckon you've got to be really brave. I did this book club event recently. It was so inspiring. It was a bunch of women and I thought more of this where they just love books. But they go every Wednesday night or whatever.
You make this sound like an original idea.
Yeah.
Is there a point to it?
It's called a book club. Yeah. I thought, I have mates who are live all over the world and are feeling really lonely. And the idea of doing that would horrify them. That would make them so...
Going to a book club?
Yeah, it's a really brave thing to put yourself out there.
You mean with people you don't know very well?
I've never been invited to join a book club. Please, Outlouders, don't invite me to join a book club. I appreciate it. I mean, I've joined one. I've Birds of a Feather, the online one. No one's ever gone, hey.
But these people, I don't think that there was anyone who was like friends with another person. It was just a whole lot of solo people who come from completely different walks of life, who were the most interesting people ever that just show up on a Wednesday. And I just saw those like connections organically grow. Same with like joining a netball team or whatever. And it's horrifying. Like the idea of it, you're just like, I don't want to put myself out there. But seeing it, I just thought there are lots of friends just waiting to be made. But then if you're stuck in a side
There's
friend,
no such thing as a stranger, Jessie. There's just a friend you haven't met yet.
The thing that's tricky is that because I was thinking about this and I was thinking about when I moved down the coast and have had to like make a new social circle. And the thing is everyone already has their friends, right? So there aren't very many openings for like
a full-time friend.
Bestie friend.
Yeah.
Because they've already got their bestie
You on
friends.
some wait lists?
So I'm definitely on some reservation lists. And it's interesting because you kind of go, oh, well, I could be invited to that lunch or be in that group, but I'm probably not going. Like,
Do you lose sleep over it?
I don't lose sleep over it because, and this sounds very arrogant, like I'm busy.
That's the thing.
And, however, having said that, I do have good friends down there too. Like I definitely do. But it's interesting. Really good friendships don't happen instantly. Like you can have rapport with people and it's great. But as I say, everybody's busy and they've all got their schedules so that you're kind of like trying to worm into other people's schedules and you're a side friend while you're doing that, but you might get promoted to main friend group if you
It depends
put
on
in
how
the
much
hard
you
yards.
like them, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's hard making friends as an adult. It's hard making friends when everybody's already got their groups. It's like it is hard.
It's an awkward dance.
Outlouders, we've just showcased a number of different friendship topics. And next week on No Filter, keep your ears open for a special episode about a type of best friend that transcends the best friend category. It's about significant other friends. And it's with this author who's posed the question, what if we organised our lives around a particular friendship rather than having a romantic partner at the top of our leaderboard? We'll probably talk more about that next week. But tell us in the Outlouders Facebook group or on Instagram or anywhere you like, your stories of friendship.
I was going to say, actually, the people I know who have the best opposite sex relationships are women in their 40s, 50s, 60s who never had kids. They all have lots of opposite sex thriving relationships.
Actually. You're very right.
Yeah.
It's made me sad for my man friends, that conversation.
It's Friday, so we want to help set up your weekend with our very best recommendations. Mia, please go first.
I'm down a Bridgerton rabbit hole, and it's the break between the first part of season 3 and the second. I don't know why. There's like a 4-week gap. I think The Crown did this as well.
They did?
I don't know why they do this.
To make you excited, to make you miss it.
My theory is that they do it so that you can't just take a 1-month free trial because it goes across 2 months. I don't know. That's maybe my theory.
That's a very business brain thing to say.
Because my appetite for Bridgerton needs to be fed, I found on YouTube a channel called Shondaland, which is the name of the production company, of course, by Shonda Rhimes, who is the icon of television, who's the creator of Grey's Anatomy and so many other things, Scandal. And she is now with Netflix, and Bridgerton was her first show for Netflix. But under the Shondaland channel on YouTube, they have all of these behind-the-scenes videos. They're so good. So there's like a day in the life of the PA to all the cast, a day in the life to the costume supervisor, a day in the life of the assistant director.
My name's Wayne Fitzsimmons and I'm part of the core crowd hair and makeup team. Just done a full-on morning, getting over 200 essays ready for today. Speed and time is definitely a thing that you've got to constantly have in the back of your head and checking your watch. There's a certain amount of time per person. I think on this it's an hour and a half, but we have to complete the full look. So that's from putting rollers in their hair, prepping the hair for the style, having the hair pieces that we incorporate into the style, doing the full makeup, and then dressing the hair out on top. And then they go to costume after we've finished with them.
then there's like interviews with Julia Quinn, who's the author of the original books. And there's just so much good content on Shondaland. If you're interested in Bridgerton, we will put a link in the newsletter that we send out every week to that.
Holly, what's your recommendation?
So mine is a bit dark for Friday, but the thing I watched this week that just blew me away, right? And that was the interview with Ariel Bombara. Now, we spoke a little bit about this story on Monday's show. You did, Jessie. We were talking about violence against women. She's the daughter of the West Australian man, Mark Bombara, who murdered 2 women last week when he was looking for his estranged wife. So this man went looking for his wife and Ariel at his wife's best friend's house. And when they weren't there, he murdered his wife's best friend, Jennifer Patelchek, and her 18-year-old daughter, Gretel. It is a horrifying story. And this week, his daughter, Ariel, sat down and gave an interview to the ABC. She basically was reading out a statement. It wasn't so much a back-and-forth interview. It was a statement about how she was feeling just days after this had happened. And it is one of the most devastating but very important documents I've ever seen that explains what women are going through at the moment. She's got this clear-eyed fury about her. She's very calm, but absolutely broken, as you can tell, where she talks about how she and her mother had told the police many times that her father was a dangerous man, that he had all these weapons, that there was one particular gun that was missing from their house and couldn't be explained where it was. And it did turn out that that was the gun that he used to murder Jennifer and Gretel. They talked about how they had got the police to escort them to go to the house for the last time before they could get out. And she just said how the police just kept telling her there is nothing we can do. There is nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. She said 5 times different male police officers dismissed her and her mother's fears.
On April 2nd, my mother and I were given a police escort to our home to collect some belongings. This was the 3rd occasion we warned police about my father's guns. An officer said, "Oh, don't worry, we know all about the guns." And when he called for backup, he warned his fellow officers to wear bulletproof vests. We were ignored by 5 different male officers across 3 occasions of reporting. By that point, we felt completely helpless, and I had to focus on getting Mum to safety.
Just given the news cycle we've had recently, and I know how women are feeling, and I don't want to tell stories that make people feel more unsafe, but I think it's important to validate these things are real. They're not imagined. Women aren't imagining that often their fear and their safety are not taken seriously, that the moments when they're trying to leave are not the most dangerous. Ariel obviously is a devastated person her father is dead, her mother's best friend is dead, an 18-year-old girl is dead, and she and her mother have to pick up the pieces of their life. And from what Ariel says in that interview, it was preventable. It was preventable. And the reason it's my recommendation, because I know it's a weird recommendation, but go and watch her and share it with anyone you know who is confused about this conversation about male violence. Because
it's people like her we have to listen to. Because as you say, there are all of these steps that if one person had behaved differently, we might not have had this outcome. And that's what's so gobsmacking about it.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
I have 2 quick recommendations. The first is But Are You Happy is back, which is Mamamia podcast that is hosted by my twin sister, Claire Stevens. It is one of my favourite podcasts. I know it's a lot of Out Louder's favourite podcasts too. It has a bunch of new guests. So it's got Laura Byrne, Brooke Blurton, Rob Mills, Khan Ong. Yesterday's episode was Josh Thomas, and he talked about being diagnosed with autism as an adult.
Oh, wow. He's just returned to Australia, hasn't he? After living in Hollywood.
He speaks so candidly about how Hollywood is a recipe for sadness.
What has it been like when you meet people who have massive profiles and have had the big break? What does it feel like to meet your idols in that way?
I'm not happier.
They're not?
No.
Are they different to how you'd expect? Are they confident? Do they come across the way you'd think given public profiles?
They don't seem like they're having an easier time making friends.
Like you can't be happy. Because he went over there. He had that show here that was amazing. Went over there, got his own show, had 2 seasons of it, and he was diagnosed with autism, and I think he broke up with his boyfriend, and then he came back here, and I'm so interested in that.
Oh, Claire said it was the most interesting conversation. You must listen to it. Also, I'm going away next week, so I thought I'd throw in an additional recommendation, which is season 4 of Serial. Are you guys listening to this?
I've not heard
No,
that
not yet.
show for a really long time.
Do you know Adnan Syed, like the first episode of Serial is nearly 10 years? 10 years ago that
Remember
came
we
out.
were so obsessed
Because
with
that was the podcast that got people
It
into
was.
podcasting.
Yeah.
So Sarah Koenig's voice
Yes.
is so
Yes. And it's like the rhythm of that show,
Yeah.
which so many people
Something
tried to mimic, but is really unique to her.
she's brilliant.
You know that the New York Times bought Serial? Bought
Yeah,
that
I'm
company.
hearing ads in
Yeah.
it now and I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. So this one is about Guantanamo, which I knew very little about. It is a series they've been working on for years and years. It is looking at the key moments of that prison's evolution. That is the prison that was set up after September 11 as a response to terrorism.
Right after September 11th, we created a brand new criminal justice system at Guantanamo Bay. A prison and a court to deal with people we suspected of being terrorists. To do what we wanted to do at Guantanamo, we pushed aside the old rules for detaining prisoners of war so we could interrogate people how we wanted and hold them indefinitely without charging them with a crime. Maybe you have an idea of what it's like to work at Guantanamo Bay. Put that aside for a second.
You know, you're on 42 square miles. You've got like 5 great beaches.
I partied my ass off in Gitmo.
Just everyone was getting drunk and getting laid.
I mean, I love Gitmo. Like it's La La Land.
We're like a Disneyland employee.
I didn't realize that war, the US troops are not there anymore. That prison is still functioning and has a few dozen people in there who are, alleged terrorists. But what you find is the way in which putting it in Cuba meant that they could skirt certain human rights, international law things, and some pretty horrifying things have happened. I just think it's like I have been watching a few things that are re-prosecuting the response after September 11, and it's just a really fascinating analysis of what was done. So Guantanamo, that is season 4 of Serial.
Do you want daily Out Loud access? Why wouldn't you? We drop episodes every Tuesday and Thursday exclusively for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get us in your ears 5 days a week. And a huge thank you if you're already a subscriber. It's time for best and worst of the week. And this is the part of the show where we get to share a little more from our personal lives. Holly, I will throw to you first. What is your worst of the week?
All right. On the weekend, I went and planted. I know what you're going to say. Just bite your lips, my friends. I went and planted new seedlings in one of my veggie beds, right? And I put the cabbage in here and Asian greens in there. And then I went back the next day and one of them was gone. And I was like, that's weird. I'm sure I did that. But maybe I'm just Perry. Like, I've forgotten what I did. Like, you often plant things in your veggie bed and forget what it is, and then you have to wait for it to come up. It's an exciting surprise. So you know what I did that night?
What if
I
you
took
plant
a picture.
something else on top of it?
Well, you won't because they're seedlings and they're like sticking out. So I actually took a picture of this Chinese broccoli to like prove to myself that I'd planted it. Because when you're like
things have taken a turn.
things have got a bit weird. And the next day I went out and it had gone.
It's seniors gardening with Holly.
There's a thief. There's a thief in your midst.
There's a thief in my veggie bed.
Could it be your dog?
It's a bloody rat. It's at least one,
Ew.
maybe more rats.
Could it be a possum?
Well, it could be. If I was being optimistic, I could say it's a possum, but I think that it's a rat. And the thing is that
Do rats like veggies?
I've not. Oh yeah, they like some veggies more than others. So last year, what I learned was they like leafy greens, which
Oh
is
my God,
winter.
I'm so bored.
Yeah, exactly. Plant things that they don't like kale. Nobody likes kale, not even rats. Plant things they don't like. But
maybe they should make it
I'm
into
not
a
having
smoothie.
any luck with my veggies this year. And I don't know if it's like, and the thing is about gardening, it gets in your head and you're like, clearly my juju's off. Clearly something's bad. The rats have come for me. So
You need a rat scarecrow.
this weekend, I'm going to have to try and rat-proof my freaking veggie beds, and it really annoys me. And so that was my worst.
Chicken
week.
wire?
Exactly. But the problem is once you put covers on, that means every time you interact with your vegetables, you have to take covers off. And I'm lazy. I'm a lazy girl.
She needs to interact with the vegetables, Jessie.
Anyway, I
Holly,
had
is
to
your
track them.
best more interesting?
Oh, my God.
Couldn't be
You're
less.
so evil.
Couldn't be less
You're
interesting
so evil. You know
than
how many of the
your
Out Louders
Chinese
love
broccoli.
gardening? They love it. Just not you.
Not me.
You know, I talked to Catherine May next week on the show about how my cool city journalist friends take the piss out of me about gardening. Anyway, my best of the week has been watching Alone Australia season 2 with my kids because it finished this week, right? There is nothing that brings me more happiness than watching shows with my kids because as your kids get older, it's hard to get them off their phones. It's hard to get them to spend time with you. It's hard to get, you know, like all of that stuff.
I'm watching Schitt's Creek with my kids at the moment.
It's so fun watching TV with your kids. People argue about but everyone in our family likes watching.
And you know what's good about watching Alone Australia with your kids or your parents is that there's no sex scenes. I assume. Because that's the worst. Like even in Schitt's Creek, there'll be the occasional sex scene and we'll just have to fast forward it because everybody's so uncomfortable.
There's no sex scenes, but sometimes there is heavy content because people are always going through mental breakdowns.
Also,
that's the whole point of being alone.
Kill animals. I hate that
They
bit.
kill animals, except to be honest, no one's killed any animals this year because they're all really shit at it.
Where are they? In Tasmania again?
They're in New Zealand, which seems like a loophole really for Alone Australia.
Is it cold?
Freezing cold. There's like ice on the ground. They're catching fish. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, obviously, people who haven't watched it yet. But the thing that's fun about it with your kids too
they're
is
alone
that
and then they're not. Sorry.
You sit there all the time going like, would you eat that mouse?
Yeah, where's
would
your
you catch
line?
that fish?
Yeah.
What would you do then? And so Billy would very confidently be like, well, he should have built a better house. Matilda would be like, well, she should have brought a better coat. And I would have definitely eaten that mouse. It's just the most fun, wholesome TV. I love Alone
Would you ever
Australia.
do it?
Hell no.
No, God, no.
They all have mental breakdowns and you can see them crumbling. And the interesting thing, and it tells you everything about people, is you know they're going to tap out when they start talking about their family. As soon as they sit there and they start going, I really miss Bob. Bob is such a nice person. Why am I at home with Bob? Why am I here freezing my tits off in New Zealand when I could be at home with Bob? And then you're like, any minute now, it's going to push the button. And they do. And they go off home to Bob.
Can you
And that's
imagine
the
how
end.
fast I'd push the button. When I used to watch MasterChef with my kids, I would always just say if they got like a mystery box or that challenge was unveiled, I'd just be like, I would just start crying and leave.
Oh, the panic.
All the time.
Mia, what's your worst?
My worst of the week is trying to learn how to parent and take care of a sick adult child. So one of my children, who will remain nameless, who lives in my house, is unwell currently. And so like it'll be, Mum, can you make some chicken soup or can you heat me up something? Can you make me some tea? And I'm like, yep. And then it'll be, Mum, can you bring me a glass of wine? Okay. And I'm like, look, the buck stops there. If you can get a glass of wine. And then this child sent me a photo of themselves drinking the wine and be like, too late, already got one. And I'm like, take your bloody vitamins, will you? My best is also family related in that my parents are on holidays. Why is that my best, you may ask? Well, they are doing the grey nomad thing and they're driving around South Australia because my mother loves the bush. When I was a child, they made us go around Australia for 6 weeks. I was in the back of the car, worst 6 weeks of my life. But they love it. She loves it. My dad endures it. So they've been like, the more in the outback it is, the happier she is. So they are like on some rough roads, middle of nowhere, whatever.
This could be the next season of Alone, just your parents on this trip.
Well,
because
funny you should say that. So every few days I'll get an update. Darling, flat tire, we're on the road. They'll send me a video and they'll be like, we had no phone reception, and it'll be my mother in an Akubra trying to change a tyre with my dad filming. And then the tyre got shredded and then they had to wait for so a truck drove past and then they got to the town and then there was no spare tyres that they could get. So my dad had to jump on someone's small plane and go to some other place to get a tyre and bring it back. And then they got another flat tyre and it goes on and on. This morning I called my mum and she's like, darling, the pilot on the small plane texted us yesterday to say he had COVID and now Dad's coughing.
Oh, no.
By this afternoon, darling, Dad has COVID.
Oh,
he hasn't had it before, has he?
Never. They are in the back of wherever, alone, in a little hut, cabin, tent, I don't know, somewhere. It's very cold. They're sending pictures. They're both wearing masks in the car. It's very exciting for them.
It's very entertaining.
It's very entertaining. It's providing our family group chat with a lot of lols, and I really appreciate it. That's my best.
Wouldn't want to be there. My worst is having to go high. And by that, I mean that sometimes the internet is a cesspit. Sometimes just like broadly, the world is a cesspit. And I think that deep down I'm actually like a really petty person. That's my instincts, is just to like
It's your brand.
It is. And I don't think I have an enormous amount of self-control. And this week, because I'm surrounded by people who are smarter and more level-headed than me, they say, no, you must go high, you must go high. And sometimes...
As in Michelle Obama, when they go low,
we go high.
She was talking about Donald Trump.
Yes. Yeah, it's not dissimilar.
Yeah.
The world I'm living in.
Would you like to be a brawler on the internet if you didn't have us idiots in your ears all the time saying, don't put it down, put it down?
I think I can see how it becomes addictive, how you could just like the energy of it.
There's not a lot of
nothing to be gained. Nothing.
No, but there's not a lot of dopamine by going high. You know what I mean?
There's no
there's
dopamine.
No there's no serotonin. There's no dopamine.
hit.
It's like you can feel.
There's just a lot
like,
of conversations.
I'm not going to give this thing oxygen. I'm not going to whatever. I'm just going to go high and ignore it. But it's not very satisfying in the short term.
No. It's not satisfying in the long term either. I keep waiting for the satisfaction of going high, and I'm like, this is just very boring.
Yeah.
Like I know it's worse to go low, but taking the high road is not giving me the sugar rush I need.
What's funny is that
no one congratulates you for going high.
No, we all cycle through it. And when you say people who are wiser and more level-headed than me, meaning me and Holly, I think you actually mean Holly, because this morning I had to throw my phone to Holly and say, hold it for me, please.
There's no time when I snap at Mia more when we're in a meeting and she starts bashing something out on the phone. I'm like, give it to me. Give it to me now.
Stop it.
What
Stop
we
it.
need
Don't
among
say
the
anything.
three of us
Don't say it. Don't say it.
is we need two of us to be going high at the same time.
Correct. It's
We can't have the equilibrium.
It's
true.
If two of us were to go low at the same time, we'd blow this podcast up.
Because I was a bit like, yeah, I'm going low too. And Holly's like, children, join me back on high ground.
Oh, sometimes
we
it's so
hate
hard. Anyway,
we hate high ground.
Tell us something nice.
My best is I watched in real time the other night. I was walking home and I didn't have the pram with me. And so I was just on my own. And I was walking home. I was at a set of lights and a man in a car, particular type of man, stopped at the lights and he had his window down and he looked over to me and I watched him being like, I'm going to wolf whistle at that person. And then I watched him clock me and decide not to. And it is the funniest thing I have ever seen. I laughed all my way home because it was like he saw the general shape of a woman.
A blonde, pretty woman.
Well, and he just kind of went, blonde woman. And then he looked at me and I looked so haggard and so like.
I thought you were going to say, I misread this. I thought it was your best because he thought, no, Jacko, come on. We don't catcall women, do we? We respect women.
No,
that's how it goes.
That's what one of my friends said. Like, maybe he got the memo about respecting women. And I was like, no. He was going to go and catcall a 13-year-old. He just saw me and went, not worth my catcall. And it was such a funny moment because I was like, I feel relieved, but I also am grappling with the fact that you get catcalled more at 13 than you do.
It's
what
profound.
It's like being our age.
It's profound. I remember very clearly the moment I realised that I was old, in inverted commas, and you're not. I'm not like suggesting you are, but I was walking down the street in the middle of Sydney with a young colleague and car hooted like more than once. And I turned to her and said, gosh, I didn't think that men did that anymore. And then I was like, See, and I think interesting. It's not. And I think that the feelings you have can be complicated because it's not in any way like, I never liked being catcalled.
No.
But you have been trained to be so visible from the minute your body began to shift. You are used to it and you're prepared for it and you're kind of braced for it. And then when it goes, it's really odd.
I watched in real time the moment it left this man's eyes. And it's like when you have a pram, it's like you have a shield because people leave you alone when you have.
You actually get a hiatus.
Yeah, you get a hiatus
from
the
male gaze.
But
and
I
being
didn't.
Pregnant,
and being pregnant. People leave you alone. But when I was neither, it was clear that he was like, maybe. And then he saw me and he was like, ugh.
I watched that happen when I was out in the street in Bondi with my daughter one time after dinner. There was a car that drove past and catcalled and she thought they were catcalling me, but I knew that they were catcalling her because she was so young she didn't register, even though she had been sexually harassed in the street before, but she still was of that mode that she thought that was something that happened to older women.
No.
And I was like, no. It's actually a children thing. Great.
Before we go, I was thinking that what we should do is do an around the grounds of what was on our other podcasts this week. Maya, who was on No Filter?
If you want to listen to something that is just going to lift your heart, I've had so many people say they cried happy tears listening to this, and it just
I haven't listened yet, but they said listen right till the end. Apparently there's an Easter egg at the end that you've got to listen out for.
Listen right to the end. So it is about a guy and his husband who have just fostered 3 little siblings. And they've become like instant fathers. They decided they wanted to foster kids. It was really interesting him explaining the process. They decided they didn't want babies or toddlers. They thought they'd be good parents for kids that were a little bit older. And so they just went to this agency, and they were like the gold standard because they were a couple of 2 people who had their own house with extra bedrooms but they both worked, so they were financially independent. They'd passed all their tests through the department or whatever. Everyone pretty much came out and started applauding just when they walked in, and they were like, you know how you want to maybe foster a child? How about fostering 3 children? They're like, whoa. And they decided to do it. And he talks about him and his husband going to meet the kids for the first time and how you go from being a couple to literally being a family of 5 overnight, like, in one day.
Okay.
So it's really, really beautiful. So good. It's No Filter about fostering.
Holly, who's on Mid?
Mid this week was Shanna Wan, who is a woman who runs this grassroots charity called Sober in the Country, and it's about Generation X women and alcohol. Generation X has an interesting and unique relationship with alcohol in lots of ways, I think, because we were really brought up with that. It was almost like a feminist act to drink like the boys. And then we went through the whole mummy wine culture and this is just my mummy juice and all that stuff. And I know so many midlife women who are now grappling with their relationship with alcohol. And Shanna has an amazing personal story of her own. She told it on No Filter once. She says that 90% of the people who reach out to her organisation are women aged between 40 and 60. 90%.
Wow.
So if you or anyone you know is questioning whether your booze is still your best friend, listen. And some people have said to me, oh, look, I'm not sober. Like, I'm not sober. And I say this on the show several times. Like, it's about, I'm not one of those people who has given away alcohol, but I think it's just such an issue for so many women in my life stage who are questioning, is this still working for me or not? And it's just a really, really good conversation about that.
On Cancelled this week, we did Jessica Alba. Did you ever see the movie Honey?
Oh, yeah.
It was some of her crimes that we looked through were
being too hot.
Absolutely. That was number one. Making us think we could do hip hop, because I think everyone took a hip hop class after that. There was a woman who got extensive plastic surgery to look like Jessica Alba, and then Jessica Alba had to release a statement. And also the feud between Jessica Alba and Gwyneth Paltrow, because Jessica Alba has her own beauty company called The Honest Company.
Clean one.
Yes. And Gwyneth is like, it's not clean enough. And she's like, fuck your clean beauty. And like, not literally, that's not a quote. It was so much fun. So Jessica Alba, and a few weeks ago, we did Kanye West, and you need to get someone in your life to listen to that.
Did you do was that a double episode? Was that like a
How we got it to one episode?
I can't even imagine.
That could have been a 10-episode series.
We're going to have links to all those shows in the show notes. That's it. We're done. We're going to be back in your ears on Monday. Thank you for being with us all week, Out Louders. We freaking love you. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman. We've had audio production from Leah Porges, and our brand manager is Kerry Scott Jackson. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and you want to support us, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so. There's a link in the episode description.